Hello, and welcome to Tool Time with the Warren County Library System. My name is Sandy Roberts, and I'm the Makerspace Coordinator for the Warren County Library. Normally, you'd find me in our Makerspace at Southwest, but with the library closed, I'm coming to you online each week at 5 o'clock with Tool Time so that you can learn about all the different things that we have in the Makerspace, learn how to use them safely, get an idea of what kind of projects you can do so that when we can reopen, you're ready to come in and create and build and make something really amazing. Today, we are talking about scissors and knives with our cut and don't run. Scissors and knives are two of the most important maker tools. You use them for just about everything. I can't imagine a day that goes by without using one of those two items, and sometimes quite a few times each day. So we're going to talk a little about the different types of scissors, different types of knives, what you might use them for, and how to keep your scissors and knives in good repair and use them safely. I will also be honest, many years running makerspaces, probably I'd say 98% of the injuries I've had in the makerspace have been the result of improper knife usage, especially those box cutters. You got to watch out for them. So we're going to talk a little bit today so that you can find out what we have. And as soon as we reopen, you can come on in and get creating. All right, let's take a look. All right, let's learn a little bit about scissors and knives in the makerspace. Let's start with safety. Okay, what's the most important tool? I'm going to say this every week. It's you. You are the most important tool. We want to protect you as a maker, and we also want you to use your mind to make sure that everyone stays safe. So wear your protective gear, keep alert, practice awareness, and always follow the safety rules. This is especially important with scissors and knives. We use them so commonly, it's very easy to get used to them, get complacent, but we don't want to do that because injuries with knives, puncture wounds or cuts can be really dangerous, can require stitches, and so we really want to try to avoid that. You can get injured with these items, and we don't want to save a couple of minutes and end up with a permanent injury. So let's talk about what we want to do. Scissors. Always focus on what you're doing. It's really easy as you're kind of clipping away to lose focus, not pay attention, chat with someone, and before you know it, you've either damaged your product or nipped your finger. So let's stay focused while we're using our scissors or knives. When you're using scissors, always cut away from your body, away from your fingers, arms, and legs, never towards yourself, because if it slips, you could end up with a serious injury. Don't try to catch a pair of drop scissors, or for that matter, a craft knife. You're only going to get injured. And only use scissors in well-lit work areas. Never, ever, ever play around with scissors. Don't climb, don't jump. You want to be careful with them. Only use your scissors for their intended cutting purpose. And that goes both for the type of scissor. If you've got fabric scissors, use them for fabric. And don't use scissors to like poke holes or pry cans or things like that. You're going to damage them. Use them for what they're supposed to be used for. Always pass a pair of scissors, handle first to someone. So you're going to put your hand carefully on the blade and hand it over. And when you are using scissors, you want to keep your wrist in a neutral position, not bent, not at an awkward angle, because especially if you're working for a long length of time, you can experience fatigue, and that fatigue means more chance of mistakes or accidents. Lastly, keep your scissors sharp and clean. Dirty, dull scissors are more likely to get caught, are more likely to cause injury, and are more likely to destroy your project. You don't want that. Now, craft knives, all the same basic rules, really. Wear goggles, though, to protect your eyes, especially if you're using a blade that could potentially break. It's rare that happens, but if it happens, it can mean really severe eye damage. So either glasses or goggles when working with craft knives. Always use a fresh, sharp blade. I can't stress this enough, and I will bug you about this. But a dull blade can slip. A dull blade can break. You want a sharp, fresh, clean blade. It's not worth, saving a couple cents on a blade and not having something that's sharp and that's going to be useful to you. Gloves can be really useful, especially if you're doing something like whittling or any kind of work where the knife has a chance of slipping. You want to protect your hands. It is not fun to have a craft knife like this go into your finger. Puncture wounds are dangerous. They cause infection because the bacteria gets pushed into that wound. It's just not worth it. Same thing as with scissors. You're going to hand a knife handle first to a coworker or a friend. You always want to make sure your blades are properly positioned and attached well. Okay, you do not want to just kind of slap your blade in, and if it's wobbly, not worry about it. Make sure it's fastened properly and in the right position. Again, otherwise, you could break your blade, you could damage your product, you can let the blade slip and hurt you. Keep your extremities out of the cutting path. Don't get your fingers in the way. Very important. Again, pay attention to what you're working on. And it's good to work on a safety mat. Don't apply too much pressure to the blade. It can be tempting to kind of force a cut, but again, you're likely to slip, you're likely to cut your surface, you're likely to damage your materials. It is always better to do a couple shallow cuts rather than try and force the blade or apply too much pressure. That can also break your blade or break your knife. Follow the manufacturer's instructions for changing blades. Take a minute to familiarize yourself with your knife. Make sure you understand its operation before you get started. And if you're in the makerspace and you're not sure, ask me. That's what I'm here for. Don't use knives for things they're not meant for. Don't try and pry objects or clean under your nails or whatever. Knives are for cutting things. And always dispose of your broken blades properly. We'll have a knife bin in the makerspace for old blades. You don't just want to throw them into the trash. Someone could get injured when they're taking out the trash, and we do not want to put our janitorial staff at risk. So be very careful about what you do with your broken or dull blades. And that goes at home too. Wrap them in masking tape or something like that. Don't just throw out a blade. All right. Types of scissors. There are so many types of scissors. so many. But we're going to go over some general types that you might find in the makerspace. Scissors, basically 2 sharp blades connected by a screw. They're basically 2 levers. One of the oldest types of tools. The handles obviously have holes for your fingers to go through, and they're a grip. Now, there are many types of scissors. There are left and right scissors. There are ambidextrous scissors. Some don't even have your typical handle. I mean, take a look over here, right? So let's talk about the different types out there. Sewing scissors, obviously used for sewing and fabric crafting. Now, there are specialty types even after just sewing. There are embroidery scissors, which have short blades and a stocky handle for cutting threads. Dressmaker scissors, which are kind of your classics that you see here. They usually have a heavy steel blade that you can guide along your table to get a nice cut, and the blades are nice and sharp. Never use a pair of fabric scissors on paper or vice versa. Paper will dull fabric scissors. And if you had a mom or dad that used to sew, I bet you as a kid, you were reminded of this because you accidentally grabbed the wrong scissors. I know I heard about it. My mom was a seamstress. So tailor scissors have a specially shaped handle to allow for accuracy and for curves that tailors need. Pinking shears, we're going to talk about, they have a special shape to their blade so you can cut edges that won't fray. Applique scissors, so many different types of special niche scissors for different things, but appliques are when you cut out pieces of fabric and then apply them or sew them. So there are special sharp scissors for that. So sewing has a whole bunch of different types of scissors. Next week when we talk about sewing, I'll point out some more. Craft scissors. These are probably the most common type that we have in the makerspace. They have long blades, usually sharpened tips, okay, sharpened points. And they're meant for straight cuts, smooth slices, okay? Used in arts and crafts, used in your kitchen, used for packaging, wrapping, all kinds of things. And you can have left and right-handed versions for adults and children. We have both. We also have specialty things like these decorative scissors. And, they come in all kinds of different sizes depending on what you want to work on. So these are very versatile types of scissors. And we have lots of different pairs in the makerspace. Grooming scissors, not really something we use in the makerspace, but, hair artists and barbers are certainly makers. Hair cutting shears are sometimes kept in craft areas and makerspaces because they are super sharp and they can go through really nicely all kinds of different materials. So sometimes people will use grooming scissors or hair cutting shears or barber shears for other materials because of that nice sharp blade. The other really cool thing, you can't see too well here, but I will show you on a pair, is that they have like a finger brace or a tang on one of the loops that gives you extra control while you're cutting. And so that's another reason that some people like to use them for things like paper craft, because you have that extra bit to give you control so you can really get a finer cut on certain materials. So you might see them in the Makerspace just for that reason. I actually keep a pair that I use for fabric work. Medical scissors, another, obviously we're not doing surgery in the Makerspace, but these scissors are tremendously useful for a number of different things. You have two basic types that you'll see. Banded shears, or sometimes called nurse's shears, have a long handle and kind of often a blunt blade tip. Sometimes you'll see them bent or curved, depending on their use. These are great for getting in there if you got to cut out, wire ties or things like that. So I always keep a pair around. Then you have these trauma shears, and they are bent at I think it's a 55-degree angle. They can cut through just about anything. So they're great for leather. They're great for cardboard. Heck, some of them can cut through metal. Sometimes you'll see them referred to as EMT scissors or EMT shears. What I love about all of these is that they're metal. They're strong metal. They can be cleaned, sanitized. You can dump alcohol on them, not going to hurt them. So they're really easy to keep in good shape. And they tend to be nice and sharp and are easy to resharpen. So they're very popular with crafters, fishermen, soldiers, scuba divers. Sometimes they're better than a knife. So you will see medical scissors often in crafting and maker spaces. Gardening, also very useful. Now, things like hedge trimmers and grass shears, not as useful for maker spaces, but pruning shears are fantastic. I keep them around for cutting dowels, cutting wire. You can use them for a lot of things that they aren't necessarily initially made for. And of course, very handy for yard work. All right, on to knives. Knives are probably the oldest craft tool in the world, right? One of our very earliest tools that we as humans learned to make. They are invaluable. You can use them for cutting just about anything. They're easy to use. They're inexpensive. They come in tons of different shapes and varieties, each of them perfectly suited for a different use. So we have a lot of different knives in the Makerspace. I'm sure you do in your junk drawer, in your kitchen, or in your toolbox. Let's talk about some general types. And to be honest, some people refer to craft knives in general or utility knives in general, and there's a lot of overlap here, so we don't need to be too crazy about it. But in general, there are two types that I tend to think of. Craft knives or art knives, mat knives, are your typical kind of a pencil or pen shape with a 1-inch pointed blade on the end. And that blade tends to be very sharp and can be easily replaced. These are great for stencil cutting, detail work. I use them to clean up 3D prints. You can get them in all kinds of different size blades and width of blade to cut a variety of materials. So a good set of craft knives, or even just one basic pen knife, is kind of a go-to tool for anybody that's doing Makerspace work. And we have a variety of these in the Makerspace. I could not be without my craft knife. And a good self-healing mat. Very, very useful. Utility knives, also called box cutters or Stanley knives, traditionally were not retractable. So they were used for all kinds of things, cutting leather, butchering, cleaning fish, all these kinds of scraping hides, all these kinds of things. But as time went on, we developed retractable blades. And here you can see, this is the classic utility knife with a metal shell that's held together with a screw, and then a kind of cartridge system that holds a razor blade, your traditional razor blade. And just having razor blades around, always a good thing. That's held in this kind of system where you can use this little button to retract the blade into the housing so that you can't get cut. And that is awesome. We do not want to get cut on these blades when we go reaching into our tool bins. Nowadays, you have these retractable, and they come in all kinds of different sizes. You can get plastic handles. You can get rubberized grip handles. You can get your classic metal. I always have one of these on hand. But you can also get ones that have one single long blade that snaps off and breaks off. So whenever it gets dull, you just carefully snap off the end, and you've got a fresh blade ready to go. So there's a couple different types. These are invaluable knives, especially if you're doing cardboard, foam work, even woodworking. cutting wire, cutting plastic, really useful. Now, there are also specialty knives. For example, there are blades that are made for woodworking, like you see here. There are blades for stonework, blades for foam cutting, for vinyl, for clay, for paint. So you'll see there are a ton of different specialty knives. And it's well worth it if you're doing a project that may need a special blade. Get out to the craft store, get out to the home improvement store, and find just the right blade. Sometimes it's worth the investment, especially if you're going to do things like whittling or wood crafting, or if you're really into foam cutting. Getting the right blade for that purpose can be an end to frustration and can save you a ton of time. All right, speaking of blades, I'm going to drive some of these points home. Use the right blade for your tool. It is not worth just trying to fit a blade that doesn't quite fit into your knife. Get the right one. Buy a couple when you buy your blade. That way you always have replacements ready to go. I tend to spend my money on my blades. I like having a nice, good, sharp blade that I know is reliable. Make sure it fits well. I mentioned this earlier, but you do not want a wobbly blade in your craft knife or your utility knife. Make sure your scissors are in good repair. Make sure their blades are not wobbling. Make sure that screw is well attached. Keep all your blades and scissors clean and rust-free, especially if you accidentally cut yourself. You do not want to have to head in for a tetanus shot. Better to either sand your blade if necessary, or replace it. Keep it clean. Make sure there's no adhesives on it. There are a number of different materials out there that will help you get any adhesive off of your knife. I find this happens a lot when I'm using things like duct tape for crafting. You really got to keep them clean. Medical scissors, I tend to just throw through the dishwasher. Works just fine. Same with kitchen shears. But keep them clean. And keep the handles clean too, because a slippery handle is a really good way to get injured. So rub that down with a bit of alcohol or soap and water. Keep those handles clean. Learn to sharpen your blade or learn to replace it. Okay, take the time. There are lots of YouTube videos out there, lots of websites that can help you. And a lot of times the manufacturer will include information too. But know how to keep your blade sharp so it's safe. And then work on a safe surface. Okay, you don't want to work straight on your table. My kitchen table probably has a lot of scarring because I'm not always good about this, but I have learned after quite a few fights with my husband that a self-healing plastic mat or vinyl mat is worth the money. They're not expensive. Keep one around to work on. We have several in the Makerspace and they are invaluable. So definitely a must-have item. Okay, that's the basics of scissors and knives. Okay, let's take a look at some of the scissors and knives that we have commonly available. And I've got a lot of different items here. So let's start with some of our scissors. We have our typical craft scissors. Okay, so these are your basic, you're going to use these for maybe cut. You can use these for cutting fabric, but paper, all kinds of different materials you're going to cut with these. These are your basic craft scissors. And we have these both for adults and for children. We've got all kinds of different varieties, different grips. I do like these that have kind of a rubberized grip. Ambidextrous, left and right, these come in. And again, for kids, you've got the blunted tip. They're not as sharp. They're safer for our young makers. So we've got lots of those. Kind of in that category are things like this kitchen shears. These are a little heavy duty. They can, they've got all kinds of other things, for prying on them. But you can see they've got a little bit of a serrated blade, which can often cut through thicker materials. So we try to keep a couple pairs of these around too for cardboard and things like that. On the other hand, we have detailed scissors like these meant for paper cutting. And you can see they've got a really nice, sharp, narrow blade. So you can get into tight angles and get real detail in. So I try to keep some of these around as well. These are really handy for paperwork and such. You've got things like these decorative shears. And if you can see, they've got kind of a shape to their blade. So when you cut paper, it gives you that decorative shape. And we have a whole set of these. These are really fun to use for scrapbooking and crafting. and they're a bit of a specialty. Now, these don't have the force to cut thicker materials. They're really meant for detailing and adding a little bit of extra flair. Let's see. These are pinking shears, very commonly used for sewing. Sometimes people use them for crafting, but I have versions like this that can do the same pattern. These are meant for fabric, and anyone who grew up with a mom or dad who sews, you know, you don't use your fabric scissors with your paper. Paper will dull fabric scissors, and you want the sharpest scissors possible when using fabric. So these pinking shears are used on fabric to create an edge that doesn't pull apart as easily. Also great when you're using felt and materials like that to give it a finish. So we have a nice heavy-duty set of these in the Makerspace for sewing activities. And of course, we have a good pair of fabric scissors as well that are only for fabric. Some specialty scissors. This is what I was talking about with the scissors that are used by those in hair cutting situations. And you can see that finger brace or tang lets you fit your finger in there, and it gives you extra control as you're using these scissors. So, you know, some folks really enjoy using them for crafting too, because they give you that extra control. This is an example of a pair of medical scissors. Okay, this is that bandage shears, or nurse's scissors, sometimes they're called. And you can see it's got that elongated handle all the way down and then the blade on the end. I typically use these for dissection class, but they're really great for kind of getting in there with fabric, or a lot of times if you're trying to take something apart, or you want to get into maybe like where you have a wire tie or a cable tie, these can be really helpful for that because they let you get into those areas. And trauma shears also are great in a Makerspace because they let you cut through just about anything. Another example of great shears, these are a pair of pruning shears I keep in my toolbox. They're getting a little worn. It's probably time to get new ones, or at least see if I can get that blade replaced. These are great for cutting dowels and even cutting things like pipe cleaners and such. They'll go through that material. So they're not just for gardening, though obviously I use them on my yard all the time. So they're great for that too. All right, let's talk a bit about some of our knives now. We've got your classic craft knife, and as you can see, this blade is ready for replacement. It's a bit dirty. These are pretty easy to replace. They just twist, and you replaced the blade. You can pull it right out and slide it right back in there and twist it down. And that's basically how you replace the blade on any of these. But as you can see, you're going to want to make sure you always keep a cap on it because it's very easy to get cut on that in a toolbox or going and grabbing in a bin. And it doesn't feel good. I have accidentally cut myself with one of these. I've gone into my finger and it does not feel good. Puncture wounds are especially dangerous because it pushes the bacteria on the surface of your skin into your wound. So they are very prone to infection. So we always want to be very careful when using a craft knife like this. But this is an invaluable tool. You're going to use it for a million different things, especially if you like doing stenciling or paper crafting or engineering. You want to cut specific little pieces. I use it to clean up 3D prints all the time. Great for leather working. Just a really multi-purpose tool. I love my craft knife. This is an inexpensive version with a little bit of a grip. This one's my favorite. This is X-Acto brand, which is a very famous brand. And it's got a full rubberized grip. And again, it's got that pen hold, so it's very easy to control and to work with. You can get them in different weights, okay, different handle weights. And you may find you like one that's a little heavier or lighter, but you really want to spend time finding one that's just right for you if you're going to do a lot of work. This is probably the most used tool in my toolbox. And you'll notice I lost the cap for it. I have no idea. I've had this one for years. I just use a wine cork, push my blade right in there, keeps it clean, keeps it safe. And who doesn't have a wine cork or two sitting around? If you don't, I've got bags of them in the Makerspace that we use for projects. Ask. I'll be happily pass one along. Before I move on, this is an example of a set, that you can get of various craft knives. Some of these blades are ready for cleaning and replacement, but I got this set, I think, at Tractor Supply. Nice little set, has all kinds of different blades for all kinds of different purposes. You'll see they're numbered here and that relates to their size all the way from 1 up. Some are meant, some are more curved of a blade, okay, which is going to be useful for certain applications versus your more pointed blades. This is what I typically use because I do a lot of paperwork and paper crafting, but these rounded blades can be useful for clay and for wood and for foam, things like that. You've got your nice fine blades in here too. And then you have some of your blades, you've got some nice big ones over here. Blades that are more meant almost as a chisel or for whittling to kind of scrape away material. So it's always nice to have those. And then you've got some curved blades, which you can use to shape, especially wood materials. So they're very useful for that. When you're using those, though, you definitely want to have a heavier handle that fits into your palm nicely. And you're going to want to wear gloves when you're doing anything like this. These can slip. And obviously, I need to replace this blade. This blade is at the end of its life. These blades, you'll notice, I think you can kind of see it. Let me zoom real quick and see if I can show you. And like I said, you'll notice with a lot of these, this one is double-edged. Oh, where is it? Okay. All these have been used by many makers in the Makerspace. This one is double-edged, you can see. So it's got an edge on both sides. But something like this is meant to be more directional. It's only got the edge on one side and the other side not as much. So be aware of that when you're selecting a blade, because if it's directional, you're going to have to go in that one direction to be able to get the movement that you want. This set is also nice because it comes with a sharpening stone. And, I'm not going to take it out at the moment, but you're going to basically work with your blade. Sometimes you'll want to wet it. Let's see if I can show you. Okay. You're going to want to be careful not to form a burr, but you can very easily learn to sharpen your knives and keep them in good repair. So a set like this is really useful. Obviously, we have something like this in the Makerspace, so you have lots of options depending on what you're working on. And this one even comes with a nice little pair of tweezers, which I like. Those are helpful for small pieces. Tiny little eyeglass screwdriver. And this is I know it's not on our topic today, but these are called calipers. And what they do is they help you measure very tiny spaces. And what you do is you would put, for example, you would just close them down onto your surface, and it tells you exactly what the diameter is. So really useful for those kinds of applications. This is a very inexpensive pair of calipers. We have a good set of calipers. But that's handy for quick and dirty measurements. So a set like this will keep you busy for a long time. And obviously this one, I think it cost me about $10. It's probably about time to replace some of this, but just to give you an idea. Here's another, we'll do this. Utility knives. Okay, this is your basic box cutter utility knife. Now this one, it does not have any blade in it at the moment, but you would have a longer blade. This one is actually the kind that you snap off. So instead of putting a blade in here, you would snap off the blade. But you can see it's retractable. This one's on its way out. But you can see that's going to give you a nice strong grip. It's a little larger. It's great for heavier materials that you're cutting. Like I might use this if I want to cut something like leather, or if I want to cut heavy duty cardboard or poster board. Something like this is going to be really great. Some specialty items. This is for paper. This is for fabric. They are both rotary blades. And what that means is you can put the blade down and roll right along and get a nice straight cut. Rotary blades are fantastic if you're trying to do lots and lots of repeat cuts, or you want to cut many straight edges all at once. Lots of folks right now are using their rotary blades. This poor sewing blade is on its way out. It has gotten so much wear and tear, but they're great for cutting shapes for things like I've been using it a lot to cut for masks, because you can just cut that shape. You put down your pattern, you layer your fabric, and you just cut right along that pattern with your rotary blade. So much faster than scissors. I love this for getting perfect straight angles. I just put my ruler, go right along the edge. Rotary blades are really useful to have on hand. This one usually lives in the Makerspace. It's probably, like I said, time to replace it. Little diagonal cutters, really great for electronics. I always keep different sizes and a couple pairs of these around for cutting wire and that sort of thing. They can also cut like small pieces of wood. Awesome to have on hand. This is a little serrated blade. It's actually more of a saw. Saw. This is actually meant for pumpkin cutting, but I use it for all kinds of foam cutting, actually. And so having a set of these around can be really, really useful. Oh, dear. Where did he come from? Random. So having these around, they aren't just for Halloween, okay? They're great for any time that you want to cut any kind of foam-like material, especially that densely packed foam. Use these a lot. And then this is called the Canary Cutter. It is, let's see, I'm going to zoom so you can see it. I think you can see that. Again, you can see it's got a serrated blade. This is specifically made for cardboard, corrugated cardboard. I like to keep them around because they are safer than using a box cutter, especially with kids and for me. And honestly, they cut better than a box cutter on a lot of cardboard. So we have a set of these Canary Cutters, safety cutters in the Makerspace, and they're just super useful. We love these. And lastly, one last set of specialty tools I want to share with you, very similar to what we kind of looked at before. These are my daughter Katie's woodworking tools that she loaned me for the day. Now she needs to clean out her bin here. You notice she's got her goggles, and she does have gloves too. They're not in here right now. But again, you can see these nice strong handles and customized specialty blades to allow for woodworking purposes. So this will give you an angled cut. This is more of a rounded cut. Very, very chisel shaped. And so when you learn woodworking, you learn how to use each of these different knives to shape your work. Okay, there's one that's got an angle. And here again is this is actually an X-Acto blade that she stole from me. But it gives you the idea that you've got that nice wide handle and that curve that you can use to shape your woodwork. So having a set of these around, I'm getting a set for the Makerspace with a nice set of leather gloves, because I think that whittling is a lost art that I would love to see more kids get into and more kids use. Oh, this is one of my favorites. This is, let's see if you can see this real quick. See, that's a channel tool. It's got that V shape to it. Can you see that? So like I said, I mean, specialty knives, you're going to find all kinds of different pieces. We also have at home, and I might add it to the Makerspace, a set similar to this but meant for soft stone. And that's a ton of fun. There are plastic knives that you can get for clay work and for paint palettes and things like that. And we have those sorts of things on hand in the Makerspace as well. So lots of different specialty tools to use with your knives and scissors. And that's just a brief overview of the world of knives. I hope that you enjoyed that and learned a little bit about scissors and knives, how to use them safely, and what kinds of projects you can use them for. Every week I'll be back at 5 o'clock with Tool Time on Fridays. Next week we're going to be talking about sewing and all the wonderful things that you can do with that. And I'll teach you a basic running stitch and a couple of other stitches. We'll go over the basics of a sewing machine. Very useful skill right now. I mean, if you need a mask, so easy to make one out of a bit of fabric. And then for our final Tool Time, in 2 weeks, we will be learning about some of the awesome digital fabrication items that we have in our Makerspace, specifically our Silhouette digital cutter and our Glowforge laser cutter. So make sure you check in for that one. We've got a lot of fun things to learn. Make sure you check out Warren County Library System's website at warrenlib.org. We've got lots of great programs, story times, turtles, adult book clubs, all online. We can't be together yet, but we're there. Don't forget that summer reading is for adults too. You can still register. You've got a couple weeks to earn badges and prizes. And of course, we're offering curbside pickup. So you don't have to wait to get your books. Just sign up for a time to pick up and you can get anything that you want. Also check out our digital resources. We've got a ton of ebooks and audiobooks and things that you can get right on our website. So until we can see you in the Makerspace, I'm Sandy Roberts, your Makerspace coordinator for the Warren County Library System. We hope that you're staying safe and healthy, and we will see you back in the Makerspace very soon.